We would often say a passage out of the book of Hebrews, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, which meant come to church, come to church. And then we said, don't come to church, don't come to church, don't come to church. And now we're trying to say, come back, come back, come back. Many people have found that they can do Jesus with a cup of coffee and house shoes. Nobody taught us how to do this.
The Black church as an institution has been radically transformed over the past 3 years. Before the pandemic, only a fraction of Black churches nationwide had any kind of digital capacity. Of the 30,000 members represented by the Conference of National Black Churches, only about 500 of those were streaming when COVID-19 hit. Most were forced to close completely, only reemerging months later after finding ways to pivot and reinvent themselves.
Again, there's a theological question being raised for the church, not the Black church, but the church in general. Because all of our emphasis has been on how do we get more viewers, but we're not called to make viewers. We're called to make disciples. So guys who, like me, who were used to maybe speaking 45, 50 minutes, maybe an hour on a crazy day, now you got to cut back to 25 minutes, 30 minutes. If I go 40 minutes, I'm long.
So how did you manage the struggle of this transition personally?
It was tough. It was tough. It was tough. There's an intimacy between the style of Black preaching where, I say something and you respond, go call and respond.
When they said this, you can accuse us of a lot of things, but you can't accuse us of being boring.
Well, if there's nobody to respond, what are you going to do? And I know some guys who struggle with that, just psychologically and, looking into that camera, I struggle with it myself.
Others have a different take.
Call and response is nice. I was trained to preach that way. Well, I'm for all that, okay? But it's a nice experience. It's a nice cultural experience. But to be honest about it, that's not the foundation of good teaching long term. Christians think that church is established the way we do it by God. It's not. A lot of this is the Catholic model that's been modernized by the Protestants. It's just and then it's been, jazzed up by the Pentecostals. So the idea of coming every Sunday morning, Sunday night, 2 and 3 services, like we were having 4 services a weekend, it's a killer.
Temple's ministry, which began its digital shift back in 2007, was one of the few prepared to go fully online when COVID-19 hit.
I realized that digital, once I understood it, was even more effective than television. And I realized that you could be more specific, you can target your audience. It didn't cost as much money. Oh my goodness.
By March 2020, 65% of Temple's income was already online. Today, that number has grown to 97%. In addition to that, his congregation gave 30% more money digitally. The benefits of digital are hard to deny. So we're here outside the historic Fame Church, First African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded in 1872 by former slave Biddy Mason.
The congregation has been resilient, however. They knew what the church had done in pre-pandemic, and so they brought the needs to make certain that the church stayed open. We missed 1 month in doing our food distribution. But the following month, we found ways to package food to have people come by, open your trunk, we'll drop the capsule of food in your trunk, and we'll close your trunk, and you drive off.
Pastor Boyd of Fame sees the benefits of online for his congregants, who previously had to drive 40 or 50 miles to church every Sunday. But he also acknowledges the loss of intimacy.
There's some people who actually need a hug, and need a hug from their pastor, from their leader, because they see a pastor as being the connection between them and God. So a hug from their pastor on Sunday morning was the psychological, the emotional fueling, if you will, that got them through the week. Personally, for me, it's been a learning curve. I've had to live on some of the things that I preached about, which is faith and determination.
The Conference of National Black Churches, which represents some 20 million people, or more than 80% of historically Black churches nationwide, partnered with the CDC early on to overcome vaccine hesitancy, initiating training and education efforts with 3,000 pastors a year. By 2022, the conference's member churches had facilitated more than 500,000 vaccinations nationwide. A Brookings Institute study found that Black churches boost racial equity in COVID-19 prevention outcomes, while a Pew study found that the vaccination gap had closed, in part because of partnerships between Black church leaders and healthcare and vaccine providers. By now, it has become crystal clear to everyone that the Black church is desperately needed during times of crisis and beyond.